Hello and welcome to today's podcast. I'm Paula, the founder and director of Exam Officers and Data Solutions Limited, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Rob Sharples from Heddle Education. Rob, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Paula. Thanks for having me. So, I am an academic by training, and many years before that, a teacher. And my specialism really was with bilingual learners, EAL pupils. And Heddle came about just because after the pandemic, there was so much demand to help children with their spoken language and more than I could do as an individual. So, we brought together a team of people and we started producing resources. The university invested, and now we have Heddle, which is, I think, one of the largest and certainly the fastest growing communities of specialist EL teachers in the country, and maybe even a bit beyond that. It's been a fantastic journey to meet so many people and be able to do things that help.
Fabulous. I know with our online communities, one thing exam staff do is really struggle with finding EAL speakers to help with the assessment part of it. And we'll get on to that, plans around that a little bit later on. So today we're talking about, supporting learners who EAL, so English as an additional language. So can you tell me a bit about the community you're building, Rob, and the services and what support's out there for sort of teachers?
Absolutely. You need a few things, I think, that are really deep. And I imagine exams officers will really relate to this, but you also need to be a bit of a generalist. So when it comes to teaching bilingual children, first thing we need to know that EAL isn't necessarily a thing in the way that we think of it. For a lot of purposes, it's just a term the Department for Education used to indicate pupils who are exposed to another language in early childhood. So that means when we talk about EAL children, they don't necessarily have low language proficiency. They could be very proficient in another language. I think for exams purposes, what we really need to focus in is children who are still developing their English as they're learning through English. And that kind of mid to low proficiency band is really, really important because that's where children will need most help in their assessments, but also in their education. The other thing I would love everyone to know is quite how long it takes to develop a new language. So children will seem conversationally fluent in, I mean, sometimes in a couple of weeks, but really in the first year or two, they'll sound very, very conversationally fluent. Your academic work places a lot higher cognitive demands on you, but also you have to learn how subjects or disciplines work. The way that we speak and act and think as a scientist is different to how we think and act and speak as a historian. So that takes a lot longer. The language is developing in tandem with all the curriculum knowledge, with the disciplinary understanding. That can take up to 9 years. So for a pupil who's arriving at the beginning of secondary, they will do very well, but they'll need that continued support, even when they sound like they're doing really well, to achieve their full potential. And that's what we try and do with Heddle. So we've got a community. We reopened the community on a new platform in September. We've had 600 schools sign up at the time of recording, which is just before Christmas. We do deep work with multi-academy trusts, including analysing their funding, and that's something I wish everyone knew about. Because the definition of EAL that the DFE uses for funding is not the most intuitive one, schools are missing out on tens of thousands of pounds in funding. So if anyone wants to have a quick look at their funding together, it's very easy when you know where to look, and they should just get in touch because there's money on the table to pay for all the things we're going to talk about later. So we do some of that unglamorous structural stuff with schools, but we have this community of teachers and we produce all kinds of resources and courses and training for them. And our goal is really simple. Through a couple of key people, the EL lead being one among them, the exams officer might be another, we want to make sure the whole school is confident teaching bilingual learners because actually, a lot of it is quality first teaching. Not all of it, but a lot of it is there. Building on that extra little bit that you need is not unachievable. It's just we haven't been talking about it for nearly 20 years now, and it's gone out of our training and out of our education system. So Heddle, I guess, we're there to have your back.
I think that's really interesting about the funding, that schools are not tapping into that funding or aren't aware of what funding is out there to support learners. So that's really quite interesting. And some great numbers there that have signed up to your website since September. So there's obviously sort of a big demand for that community that you're building and that support for people.
I mean, I certainly hope so. I think, if we look at bilingual learners, it's about 1 in 5, just under 2 million children. And so your average school, using Ofsted data, 1 in 10 children speak another language at home, which is about 9% actually. When you're listed as being an above average school, it means you're above about 9%. But actually the national average is more like double that, 21.8, I think, on today's data. So that means that it's hugely unevenly distributed. For most schools, the most common figure is about 1 in 10 pupils, but for a lot of schools, it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. And it's really interesting to learn how schools respond differently to that. So some schools have a high number of bilingual pupils and they're really good at it. Some schools have 1 or 2 bilingual pupils and are really good at it. But actually schools at both ends of the spectrum really struggle. And then you bring in ideas like the trauma that some children bring with them, or high mobility and children being relocated quite often. And what starts as a simple language question becomes what I think all teaching is. You're dealing with, the full complexity of human life and the society we live in. So it's definitely filling a need. And the challenge for us has been just to keep responding to it, keep doing things that people find valuable as you're doing.
I know this year one of the changes within the JCQ publications for the exams this year, which it was a change that was really welcomed by exam staff, which doesn't often happen, I must say, is that previously if you applied for a student to have a bilingual dictionary and 25% extra time, the application lasts 26 months. So literally a student could have a bilingual dictionary and extra time on the Monday, but the application would have expired on the Tuesday. And it seemed a really, not even complex, but a really strange system that cut-off point could happen. But obviously the JCQ this year have changed it, maybe listened to feedback. So now any applications for a bilingual dictionary and 25% extra time, if they finish in the middle of the series, if the cut-off point is the middle of an exam series, it actually now lasts until the end of the exam series. So we're not going to have students having that support on one day and it taken away the next day in the summer series. They will get it now until the end of the summer series, which I think has been welcomed, one, to support students, but also regarding planning and preparation for the exams as well. So it's made that a lot more streamlined. So any thoughts on sort of bilingual dictionaries, Rob? Any best practice?
I mean, first of all, what a wonderful change. We spend lots of our time decrying the policy environment we live in, but actually when policymakers get it right, I'm really glad it's talked about as well. If you think about how we're training students for exams, and the path for is training, using a dictionary is quite different to not using a dictionary. How you approach words that you don't know, how you guess meanings from context are quite different when you've got a dictionary and when you haven't. So taking that away midway through an exam season is actually, it's not just taking away a resource, it's asking a child to approach the exam in a different way. So for loads of reasons on our side, we hugely welcome that as well. Dictionaries can be a bit of a double-edged sword sometimes because we're only allowed to use paper dictionaries. They take time and they also require quite a lot of knowledge to be able to think of the words you want and to go and double check it. So if you're writing, the dictionary, of course, is differently useful to if you're reading. And of course, for a lot of technical concepts, a bilingual dictionary is really useful. Photosynthesis is an easy to translate word, but a lot of others are not. One of the things that learners really struggle with, where they look for their dictionaries but can't find it, is the cultural meanings. I think the IGCSE is worth a real mention here because it explicitly sets out to remove some of that cultural assumptions that we would take for granted that would maybe be even helpful, but for learners from other cultures would just be a bit incomprehensible. Another thing you've got to get your head around. So bilingual dictionary is useful, but actually there's things that we can do even without those. Good set of strategies for vocabulary development all the way through the school can be happening in every lesson and will make a huge difference when you get to the exam. So we'll talk a little bit later about how we systematize some of that, but we work a lot with schools as Heddle on a set of core strategies or skills. And of the first three, we talk about just pausing as you talk as a teacher, just because there's that stream of speech coming at a new pupil. The second one is oracy. And the third, equally important, is vocabulary. So just highlighting the vocabulary in text, even as simply as with a highlighter, or just pointing to it on your slides, or just pausing and repeating it, getting pupils to write it down, recording it effectively, presenting words in context and not as wordless, modeling good vocabulary. All of these things are actually, with a little bit of practice, they're quickly second nature. They don't require a specialist EAL teacher, and they're really good for all children. Because, of course, while we focus on bilingual children developing a second language, all children developing their academic language all the way through schooling. So this is a great one for lifting everybody. Really conscious attention to vocabulary means the dictionary is much, much less needed in the exam. And that can have a huge impact for very, very low effort. And I've spent my years cutting up bits of paper for classes. Anything that's pitched to me as no prep is an automatic win. These are habits more than anything. So not even prep, just doing. And the other thing I say is we train our learners for exams, but also we could train our learners to deal with the unknown better. So are we good at making an educated guess? And as to say, are we good at deciding when we need to use a dictionary? Do pupils have a good grasp of morphology? Because that's a great guide to what part of speech something is. If you're trying to work out a word and you know that adverbs tend to end in ly, well, look, just give it a crack, right? Because you're not, in most subjects, you're not being marked so explicitly on the details of how you express it. You're being marked on what meanings you express. So the more we can get learners to make a good, confident guess, the better. And I think all of that comes down to everything we do in the classroom, really, developing vocabulary, giving pupils lots of opportunities for writing, for praising them when they get things nearly right, because that's going to be a great exam skill, and so on. And that takes a lot of the pressure off bilingual dictionaries so that when they have them, they can use them to maximum effect.
Fabulous. I know on our online communities for exam staff, there's two sort of hurdles, if we want to use that word, where they face. One is sometimes finding actually a bilingual dictionary in the language that is needed. And some schools really struggle to find them. So if there are any companies listening, anybody can signpost anywhere where we have a wide range of bilingual dictionaries that are available, please get in touch so we can pass that information on to our communities. And also another way that the communities struggle with and schools struggle with is getting somebody in to provide the speaking part of a home language. So if a student does want to take a GCSE in the home language, it's getting somebody in to be able to speak that language and to be able to facilitate that speaking assessment. So one of the things we have been working on behind the scenes is a new directory. So it will be full of, or we're hoping full of, EAL professionals, language speakers, tutors that can support schools and colleges by going in to provide that speaking assessment. As in anything new, we've had a few sort of hurdles to cross as we've been moving forward with it. It has got to be right before we launch it. It might mean that I'm sitting and eating my turkey and pulling a Christmas cracker looking at the directory online. We are hoping to have that for release to everybody in the new year. Our plan around that currently is for a small annual admin fee. Schools and colleges will be able to go on and look for speakers, and then speakers will be able to go on and put themselves on what languages they speak and what areas that they can cover. And hopefully that will help a large amount of our community and students by getting that expertise into schools and colleges to provide that speaking endorsement.
Could be more important, could it, Paula? This is one of the fundamentals of how we maintain bilingualism in our communities. And the number of teachers in our community who say, my parents didn't really push me to use our family's languages, and I've had to kind of relearn them a little bit as an adult, and I'm now really committed to doing what I can for the children I work with. I think the more we can do to support home language GCSEs and home language exams in any way, just to recognise and credential not just the value of having languages in our society, which is good for the country as well as good for us, but also just the learning that comes from them. These are not easy options, are they? They are stretching exams that make students really learn something that they might have taken for granted earlier. I mean, so we talked this bit before, and I think the first time we ever met, we talked about the challenges of building things new. So we will advertise your directory, of course, with our community and see if we can connect you with some people. We're trying to do something else that might interest your listeners. So we're trying to distill a lot of what we've done, which can get big, because language is a part of every subject. You can end up trying to change the world before you've tied your shoelaces. So we've tried to distill that into a set of simple and easy to follow, really practical stages. Now, Internally, we're calling this our Heddle system. I think when we launch it, also in January, it might have a better name. I hope we do anyway.
You might have some inspiration at one point.
I hope
Just
so.
for a
Well,
new name.
it won't be over turkey because I absolutely detest turkey for Christmas. Don't tell anyone. I think the challenge for us has been to say, look around at what people are doing, and everyone's saying about let's organise provision according to children's needs. We have low needs, medium needs, high needs, and so on, and that's okay. It makes intuitive sense, but it's helping each child one at a time. It's not building capacity in the school to help children over the long term. The number of bilingual children has doubled in the past 10 years. It doubled in the 10 years before that. So we know that this is continues on a high growth trajectory, as you'd expect, because the country is just getting more multilingual over time. So what can we do? We've restructured our work around the needs of classroom teachers. So we think not as high, medium, and low needs, but we think of core, enhanced, and specialist. Every teacher has a core of techniques they use with new pupils. We can build that up a little bit. And our most simple starting point of just pausing or receive vocabulary are really easy things just to try. Don't need much training, get it going. And of course, we can add to this. The schools that are really good will have a wider core set of schools. The schools that are new will have a smaller set of skills. But these are not individuals, because you can't just focus on individuals. It's got to be, what's our school got in their capacity? Sometimes a pupil will join your class and need a bit of help with, and that's our enhanced tier. So it's really focusing on, would having a teaching assistant in the classroom make a difference? Would a bit of coaching from the EAL lead, or maybe from us at Heddle, would that make a difference? How can we help you keep that child participating and learning in your classroom? And then sometimes it goes beyond that. You really do need specialist support. And there we can show you how to set up the kind of transition programs and so on that you need, often with external partners, to help the transition out of school go really well. That system now has short courses, it's got community, it's got resources, it's got guides for senior leaders. We released a couple months ago our big Ofsted guide, written with real experts in inspection, to help you plot that school improvement journey from the beginning. And I hope that schools who hear about this and who join us not only will benefit from the funding analysis, which typically it's between £5,000 and £10,000 a school that we've managed to find for them. So really no guarantees, of course, but typically really helpful results. Spend a little bit, keep most of it, spend it on children, spend a little bit of that on getting the systems in place. And it's a super low cost way of just making sure the whole school is building capacity. But I 100% relate to what you're saying. The number of slips and trips and redesigns we've had along the way of getting there, I wouldn't like to list them.
Sometimes even at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll wake up and I'll just have that moment where you think, yes, right, okay, should we change the name? Yeah. But once we launched, yes, I'm sure
Yeah.
it'll all be worth it. And really, it's about making that impact. As you said, it's about helping others and supporting others. And really, that's what we do with our online community for exam staff. It's about helping everybody and building that community and supporting our learners.
And I think
Fabulous.
there's this real kind of parallel between exams officers and EL leads, because you're typically the only one in your school.
Yes.
And I think that community, actually, it's a great joy to speak to you as well, someone else who's trying to do something that doesn't exist yet. But I think for all of us, having other people going through the same things and just learning from each other's experience, solving problems together, it's just so valuable. It turns out ChatGPT hasn't got all the answers. Real people, real communities still have a value. Right? Not a bad message in the festive season.
Well, thank you for your time today, Rob. Any sort of last thoughts on where you'll be heading next year or other support?
Well, I mean, the big move coming next year is going to be Heddle Send. The need for really good support. And we've got some EdTech tools that are coming out that will make it much easier for multi-academy trusts to coordinate support at a larger scale. It's going to be really exciting. But we'll keep working where the needs are, where a bit of expertise, a lot of community, and some really great new resources will make a difference. That's where we'll be.
Fabulous. It does inspire me today to maybe learn my home language more. Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time today, Rob, and it'd be exciting to see where sort of Heddle education and what you're building does. So thank you.
Likewise. Cheers, Paula.